That's what Super. Det var det. Ja, det er helt mange tak. Nå, kan vi så ikke bare starte? Should we just start? Okay, we're gonna ask a little bit into funding and project management. If you have any inputs on that, a little bit about Kenya, and then just Periyama in general. So yeah, if you could just introduce you and your background and.
Yes, my name is Claus, Hedegaard Jensen. I'm the head of sponsorship in Periyama. Periyama is an NGO that, among other things, works in Kenya, and we have a collaboration with Rhinotivity in relation to their fundraising for the upcoming trip to Kenya. I'm a geographer by education, and I am on the board of CISO, the largest membership organization for development NGOs in Denmark.
Nice. And did you study here in Denmark?
Yeah, I studied here. How's the sound?
The sound looks really good, so we can figure out how to.
Where should I look?
Just look at me, it's fine.
Whoever asked the question.
But during the application process for both private and public funds, is there a more preferred way of approaching these applications, or?
Well, there's simplification to say that there's one way to do it. First of all, most public funds have their own project definition set up in the sense that they have rules for how you should apply. There's always documents that describe precisely how they want you to apply for projects. There's tools you should use, and there's setup that you should follow. Doing anything else would automatically mean that the project will be declined. There are some private funds who do a bit of the same. So I would say with private funds and with large private companies, you might come across and they might have a sort of a setup that they want you to follow. But they also might just ask you to make an application, make a phone call. So for the public, there will always be a setup you need to follow. For private, it varies depending on the fund or the company or whomever you meet.
Yeah.
How they want you to apply.
Yeah, because I think like when we have been applying, then like nobody has the same application procedure. Like it's like people have like open deadlines, closed deadlines.
In the public funds, there will usually be certain tools you need to use. NIDA has their own setup they need to use, and CISO has their setup, and they use, for example, for large projects, they use a tool that's called Logical Framework Approach that you have to follow. It sets up certain parameters for how you need to describe your projects with outcomes and output and things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Do you at Periyama, like, do you use any form for strategic like data gathering in order to like succeed in fundraising, or?
Well, I would say no, in the sense that we apply for the funds we sort of find, and of course as part of the fundraising work gathers together which funds might be interesting to apply for, put down a timetable for when the application needs to be sent and such. So they gather in the sense that I sort of try to make an overview of which funds are out there and what they might be, how they might be of interest to Periyama. So no, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's more like if you like do a research beforehand on some specific things.
Well, I would, depending on how much information there are on, for example, the large private funds homepages, of course look through them and see what kind of project they've accepted before. There's no reason to apply for a large private fund who has never given money to anything outside of Denmark, for example.
No.
So it's more sort of a scouring through the funds to see which ones would be interested in projects that we could think of creating. Of course, we have our sort of our base, which is education. That's what we make most of our project around. Moving on up to entrepreneurship and microfinance. So when I scour through funds, it's of course primarily for these three things, but on the other hand, I personally also look for things that might be sort of interesting in the long run, projects or whatever, so that can bring something different. So data gathering in the sense that I try to make a narrow sort of range of funds that directly apply for Periyama, and then also a broader one that could fit into future ideas. But it also gives sort of sometimes too much data lying around, too much superficial so superficial database about things that might come to you. So well, I wasn't too structured in the beginning. Now I definitely tried to cut it down to which ones will definitely use already Periyama and which ones could be of interest and which would as a member of CISU, I have access to Rhinotivity, which is a web page with has a database with a lot of these funds. They're a little lagging on some of the funds that work with development projects, but sort of an entrance point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it is scouring through the internet, looking up keywords that might be of interest, combining funds with keywords for projects you want to do research.
Yeah, and then maybe hold an intern database also just to build up further on, like, yeah.
Well, I make an Excel sheet where the fund names, the web pages, the dates for applications, the primary interest of the funds. We have in Periyama got money from some smaller private funds who haven't got web pages other than sort of they tell that they exist because they need to show that in the public databases. And then we're back to some of the things about data gathering in the sense that you need to know people also. Many lawyers sit on the board of many smaller private funds, so unless you know someone inside some of the many smaller private funds out there are many of them, it's hard to get in contact with some of them. So we got money from one where he was a family fund, and he was a family member, and he sort of pushed it up the chain and said he'd like the fund to donate money to Periyama, which they did, and gave us 50,000. So that was nice, but it was also because of someone private
relations. Yeah.
And he also told us that we should not do it again, at least within the first couple of years. So I would say that's a good thing to take in mind, that if you get money from a fund, you should not necessarily apply for the same one straight away again. They might be annoyed by the fact that you have to appreciate it just finishing off what you have done in the first batch of money.
That's a nice one.
But that depends on how you have contact with the fund. There's also funds that would like to make a longer partnership. But that depends on how you are allowed to interact with the fund, how much you can talk, and how much they think.
But do you think it has an impact if we contact a fund beforehand? Have some.
You can try to contact them first. Some might say just send an application, and some would say, okay, we can take a coffee together and talk about it. So yeah, always try to contact people. It's same in most things in this life. That if you can get a personal contact with someone, there's that itch. Also because if you can talk to people, you can get past misunderstandings that might be in any written text. You might write down something that you feel is totally explains what it is you want to say, but on the other hand, you are always building your text on sort of an in-house knowledge that might not necessarily translate out to people in the same way that you internally speak about things. We experienced that with Hariyama, that we sort of got too much inbred in our speak that we forgot that people outside haven't had the same conversations over the last long period of time. So yeah, they were not clear on what it was we sort of tried to explain because we had a lot of background. So it's always better to talk to people.
Regarding to the media, like, do you have had any form for media strategy on giving yourself and the company supporting some kind of exposure agreement or?
No. We use Facebook primarily and LinkedIn a bit, and then again, networking to sort of meet the people we expect might do projects together with us, but not the media. I think there might have been an attempt before I started with Hariyama approaching Børsen, the pagan newspaper, about making an article about a team building course project we had. But no, not in my time. We have had some media interns, but they have all worked on social media profiles and sort of general media. So no, we haven't worked much with it. And Hariyama is not that large an organization, and we lack, even though I say we have focus on education and entrepreneurship and microfinance, we lack sort of a core thing that is easy to explain at times. Whereas Rhinotivity, I think you have a much easier thing, a much easier case to explain. So,
because as now it is pretty concrete, like what.
But also not just the Rhinotivity as an organization and what you do, but also you three and how you have started and why you started. That is a story in itself also. And I think you could use that already now after you come back from Kenya. You could use it sort of to tell from when you started this as a school project to where it is when you end your school. That is a fascinating story already. It's not just you have already broached out to us, to them, to us. So, come a long way in a short time.
Nice. Yeah, like you talked a little bit about it earlier, but once you are in contact with the company or a future sponsor, or like how is it? What do you call it? Like how do you build up a further ongoing relationship with the company? Like if you want to get donations like on regular basis, or.
Well, I think you're asking the wrong person in Hariyama for that one. Sorry, that's more Søren's department.
It's Søren's department. Okay.
So,
do you how about Carsten? Do you know if he knows anything about it?
Well, he's. I don't think you'll ever meet a man who is more Mr. Network than that guy.
And Carsten?
Yeah, he has such a large base of people he knows, where he, just having met them once, is able to get a hold of them a year later, 2 years later, just saying, we met then and then. You remember? Yeah, I was this he has a way of meeting people and be able to reapproach them that is absolutely fantastic.
So in a networking sense, you need to have that outgoing personality and able to.
Well, I would say you need to be able to network in the sense you need to be able to approach people. And Carsten is a special example. He's sort of a jolly guy. He's not as structured as Søren. He also does a lot of networking. He has a meeting at network business network meetings, and sort of so he has his kind of approach to how he does it. And again, you need to ask him besides how he does it. But Carsten just have a way of being able to ask people a lot of things.
So if you have to describe him, his personality approach with 3 sentences, what would you categorize?
Personality approach.
Yeah.
Approach to others.
Yeah, exactly. How you perceive him, for example.
Well, he's a happy guy and he's open. But he's also not the most sort of concrete person. So he's Mr. Network in the sense that he can get a hold of a lot of people and get them also to do things for him or to give him information. But he's not the one who sort of creates the long run thing for Periyama in contact with business. He sort of started and sent it all. So before he went to Kenya, he worked for Københavns Kommune as a job consultant and having the hardest cases of those people who had the hardest time getting the Kommune had the hardest time getting into a job. He just had a knack for finding things for them and getting them to try it out. He just have a way with people. That's also why he fits so well in Kenya. You know, he's a big white guy.
Yeah.
Sort of
I think. Do you have anything on funding for us, like that we should know? Like,
well, I was actually Carsten said it. There's an organization that works with newly started NGOs. Not about funding of money, but the research part. So getting you in touch with people that will help you with the next steps. They work a lot with sort of finding. They work with organizations building their business model in the sense that they need to get you to be sustainable in the long run. So it's not money, but it's more manpower. What you might need to build your organization for the next step. You might be a lawyer to help you write down the proper forms for your business, for the NGO setup. You might be knowing an accountant to do your books at the end of the year or whatever it is. You might need. I'll give you the others. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, it would be great.
But in regard to funding, now you started with crowdfunding as first, I would say, private Danish funds. The public funds is not approachable for you before you have sort of a firm base. There are also some of them that says that you need to be a certain age, as the organization needs to be a certain age. As such, it needs to be completely up and running with a proper board and with sort of a proper setup, guidelines for how the organization runs and who's responsible. So private funds, I would definitely go for that. I can give you the access codes I have for the DK and try to run it through that one. And then go through. It's the reason why fundraisers exist, even though they sort of, as we talked about it before we get into that, having a fundraiser who doesn't know what a project the company wants is sort of, in my view, a little bit useless because he can find funds that might have keywords for what the organization does, but he cannot write a proper application unless he knows what kind of projects you want to apply for. You need to apply for projects, you need to apply for something tangible, something that helps people, something that does something that is material, or something that creates development. So it takes time to get a proper feeling for what funds are out there and where you might apply. Now, even though I can't talk about how you will approach a partnership, I can talk a bit about the partnership in the sense that there's right now with the World Development Goals, SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, to be precise, there's a great focus on partnership. It's one of the goals in itself. Goal 17, as I remember. But the thing is that people talk a lot about partnership without defining it. It's a little bit like taking sustainability and throw it into a group of people, and you will get 5 people. You will probably get 3 to 4 different answers to what sustainability is. Same with partnerships. So if you approach a company, it might be simply to make a partnership about them giving you a donation and then you give them feedback. That kind of partnership. A partnership would then in that sense be a longer running thing. If it's a single donation, you say they're a donor to your cause, but they're not as such a partnership. But if you find a company that could build a proper partnership with someone who like to co-create something. Co-creation would be that you accept that they get influence on what the project should be about. Of course, taking into account that there has to be no harm, and it has to be on the premise of development and understanding that what you as an organization do and who you want to help and such. But letting them use it as branding, for example, if you get a company who would like to donate hardware but with their names on it and with pictures down from Kenya with their name branded product somewhere, in my view that is a fine example of something that you could do because, well, they can use it in their public relations, they can use it in the press, they can use it internally. Yeah. It might be they will send people down to visit and just they can build on something longer, and if they on the other hand then would help you understand some of the hardware, what they can do, what the hardware can do, what you already know a lot of things about, but you might run into engineers in a company that knows more than you do about how perhaps the newest technology and what they can do and what the next thing is, what is coming and such. And that could be also a kind of partnership that they are helping you to understand how you can build better projects with new materials and such. So partnership is a thing you need to take as a broad perspective, but on the other hand, you also need to be clear with a company if they come and say, oh, we will have a partnership. They need to put something into it. Yeah. It might just be money, right? But then it's more donation. It might be money and then branding, and okay, you can say whether or not you will accept, depending on how much they want to give and what kind of support they want to give. If they only want to give support to the project, but not to you as an organization for the administration you have to do for the shipping and such, then you should say no, because Korean has tried that we sort of made projects with a company without them accepting the fact that there's an organization behind that needs funding to run. Now you're all volunteers, but you will still have things that need to be paid. And so a partnership needs for the company needs to hold in itself an understanding that it's not just supporting a cause, it's also supporting the organization if they want a long-run partnership.
And we should maybe have 3-4 types of packages ready. Like
you can try, but also just have it sort of in your mind what it is you want to talk about. You at least need to take sort of some scenarios. I want to say create some scenarios for how you can make partnerships with companies. It doesn't necessarily need to sell them a package. That depends on how they want it. Some companies also want sort of your logo on their websites. They want their logo on your website. But again, it's sort of with a proper partnership as co-creation. It also means that you take a dialogue about how you would like to do the public presentation of the project together with them. So it's not just that there's a donation, there's a project, there's also all that around how it's presented and who is told to, and how it's, the information is spread out in Denmark, not just as a sort of a marketing strategy for them, but also for you sort of to tell why it is you do what you do. Remember, they do marketing for their branding, but you do marketing for Rhinotivity in the sense that you want to tell why you do what you do. As you wrote on the crowdfunding internet is a human right. So you want to tell about why you think that is something that should be worked for. Why it is you work for it, and how it helps people. And so you have a story, they will have a story, but they need to support you for you to be able to tell that story. So it's not just a project that's support, you also support you. The same, if you get a donation, you need to be sure that within that donation there's money for your expenses as well. Small amount, but a necessary amount.
Some percent.
Sådan omkring Kenya og de personlige erfaringer nede fra Kenya. Og så lidt om logistics, når I har sendt dem.
Ja, det er Søren igen.
Ja, okay.
Så det kan vi også springe lidt igen over.
Og så,
DHL, hvad han lavede af. Hvad har vi? Kenya, eller hvordan?
Og så bare lidt om Periama. Så det er faktisk...
Men så vi siger...
Men vi har også fået meget på Periama, kan man sige. Sådan.
Allerede, ja.
10 minutter, så bliver vi nødt til at have ham.
Ja. Yeah, it would be then maybe on the e-waste, like if Periama has some protocols on the e-waste policy.
On what?
On e-waste, because where
e-waste.
you...
No, in the sense that we have sent computers down to Kenya, but we have not yet come to the point where some of them have sort of died. We have sent computers to India, but I'm not aware that we have any contact with the school regarding when the computers die or anything like that. So, and we're also not, as Hedegaard does, tracking the computers or anything like that. Their holistic approach is fantastic, and like of us, but they are like the same, but it's just we haven't got the setup for it. And we've never sort of taken that approach where computers and hardware and such is the essential thing. So no, e-waste is not something that has been on the agenda.
So you haven't in Periama taken some form for serial number of the computer or something like that? Would that be something you would recommend we did?
I would recommend you ask Hedegaard how much of an effort you need to put into it for it to work, and what contracts they have with their partners about how they then deposit the material before it is shipped out. They know a lot about it, and have, as I said, they have a very holistic approach to it. They follow the material all the way through the chain with a large database on all the materials with barcodes on them and such. Their own barcodes they make and put on.
But that's also a huge organization compared to...
Well, it is compared to you guys, but they also built themselves up over time.
That's true.
So ask them about how you could approach it as a small organization, how they did it in the beginning and such. They would probably have some experience in that regard. But you probably know more than I do about the importance and meaning of e-waste in general.
It was just if you had some policy on like what happens to your...
We can't follow the computers afterwards. Again, we work through a partner who hasn't got the same capacity as, or at least not the same setup as the partner Hedegaard has in Malawi.
Yeah. No. Do you have anything?
Yeah, the only thing, it's a kind of like a side question to Rhinotivity, because we're also thinking of, is there any job database for volunteer applicants and projects down there, for example?
Projects.
For example, let's say Kenya, they have a project they want to get out there, where they could apply for volunteers coming from Europe down to there. So they're kind of doing the approach towards Northern Europe instead of us going down to them.
Oh, they make the approach.
Yeah, they make the approach.
Interesting question. Well, there's, in Denmark there's Hedegaard, I think it's called, where volunteers sort of can find jobs. Globalnyt.dk is also a database for jobs in the development community.
Yeah, because the approach that we talked about earlier was, it's always easier when someone comes directly to you with a sale. That could also be an approach with the NGOs that is located around the globe.
But again, Carsten is down in Kenya is working with volunteers that comes down there. Most of the people he know. But you want Tuna Panda to send an application to Denmark for volunteers to help them.
Yeah, exactly. Because the thing is, for example, if we hadn't reached out to Tuna Panda, then we would never know they existed. But if they have the opportunity of a two-way communication, but they make the communication first.
I'm not sure why you want it to be Tuna Panda, not yourself, because you will be the guarantor for Tuna Panda.
Yeah.
If an organization from Kenya applies for volunteers in Denmark, who is to say it's not a scam? So you need to be those who say Tuna Panda is a good organization.
Yeah.
So it needs to be you guys who sort of are the
credibility.
Yeah, and also you need to be the first point of entry for volunteers. But Toxicart here has experience with volunteers and how you do it.
Otherwise, I don't think I have any more questions. Do you?
I only have one. But basically, you try to plan everything ahead, right? When you're planning the project.
We try, yes.
And then what happens if there is an obstacle? Suddenly there is an obstacle. Do you include it in the plan, or do you just like sort of somehow try to overcome that without including it in the plan?
Well, let's start with what planning is. Planning is making the optimal course of how a project should be. If you should do proper project planning, you also make a note of what the risks are, and at the same time you make notes about how you would respond to various risks. Of course, it's a thought process of what kind of risks might be and how you could react to that. But that's sort of a normal thing, and the thing you should always do in project plan. You should always make a risk scenario. But if it's something that is outside the risk scenario, well, you need to react to it. And depending on if it's money or people or something like that, well, if you haven't got the resources to overcome, you need to stop the project. You need to pull back. You should always take a project in steps and evaluate it again. If you have a 6-month project, after a month, take a look at the project. Is it running smoothly? Is it not? Will the finances hold? Will it not? And if it doesn't, you need to accept and discard the resource you spend on the first month. Just say this project can't do. It's easier said than done. And if you know a lot of large public projects in Denmark, you will see that they don't do that kind of thing. Yeah. But you're so small, and the risks you are likely to run into is probably something that you can overcome. Yeah. So it's more a matter of whether or not it extends the time, or there's extra money needed, or if it's something like the rulers disappearing in customs in Kenya. Well, bad luck. It's just how it is. You need to send a new batch, and that's that. If it's Tuna Panda, it's suddenly closing. Well, you need to find a new partner. Decide. something else to do. If it's one of you guys only signing to stop, well, then you need to reevaluate your organization. If there's no money for what you want to do, well, you need to wait until there's money. So you need to reevaluate how you apply the funds. Within a project, if there's suddenly well, let's say fallout in power while you're in Kenya, in the time span you need to test your equipment. Well, depending on how much sort of wiggle room you have, you might need to extend your ticket. So you might need to say, okay, today we do something else, and tomorrow we hope that the power is back. If you have that room in your timetable, if you don't, you might need to leave it to tune a panel to test it yourself.
So it kind of makes sense to include scenarios when doing the risk analysis.
Yes, always take scenarios into account. That's how you take a scenario of what kind of risk could happen and how would you react to it, and what resources or money or people you need to do that. Of course, you could always spend an enormous amount of time doing risk scenarios. So take more sort of what you think could happen in a smaller scale. The very last things you could sort of know, this is a risk that in Kenya in these days suddenly fire breaks out in Kibra and it, well, then, yeah, you run. So it's those kind of risks, right? But yeah, so take more of those that is about how the project will be hit. And then there's sort of the more personal things about yourself. That's sort of another risk analysis, more how you personally while in Kenya, but it's more something you know after having been there.
Well, I think that was it.
Good?
Yeah.
Yes.